So, a recent study of corporate communication workflows came out, and it found that an email containing just 6 words can easily cost a firm upwards of $5,000.
Right, which is just, I mean, it's a staggering amount of money for a single email.
It really is, and it's completely unbillable, wasted time. So today, we are actually looking at those exact 6 words that routinely trigger that kind of, financial black hole.
Yeah, it's a very specific, very common trigger.
Exactly. So I want you, the listener, to picture a scenario that might feel uncomfortably familiar. So Tuesday afternoon, roughly 4 p.m., you're sitting at your desk already juggling like 3 different highly complex deadlines.
Right, the friction of the day is already weighing on you.
Totally. And suddenly this notification pops up on your screen. It's an email from your direct supervisor or, maybe a senior partner if you're operating within the rigid hierarchy of a law firm.
Which just adds a whole other layer of pressure.
Oh, absolutely. So you open it up, bracing for impact, and the entire body of the email consists of just this. Need this today. Please prioritize.
Just hearing those words spoken aloud triggers a biological stress response.
Doesn't it, though?
It really does. I mean, for anyone who has ever worked in a high-stakes environment, it's the digital equivalent of a fire alarm going off in the building, but without any instructions on where the exits are located.
Okay, let's unpack this, because what follows is basically a masterclass in how the human brain processes ambiguous information when it's under severe pressure.
Yeah, ambiguous being the key word there.
Right. If you're the associate on the receiving end of those 6 words, you aren't merely reading a request for task prioritization. You're reading, like, a psychological thriller.
Oh, completely. You read urgency, naturally. But human nature dictates that you also read criticism, you read profound anxiety, your internal monologue just starts spiraling.
I've been there. It's like, did I miss a deadline I wasn't aware of? Is the client furious? Am I about to be put on a performance improvement plan?
Exactly. So you react the way any professional operating in a culture of fear would react. You scramble.
You rearrange your entire day. You cancel your evening plans. You consume, frankly, unhealthy amounts of caffeine.
Right, you work late into the night. And then you finally deliver a memo that you know deep down is subpar because you sacrificed quality for perceived speed.
Yeah, and we all know how this story ends. The sun comes up the next morning, the senior partner opens that rushed, frantic memo, takes one look at the formatting and the incomplete analysis, and just sighs.
And then they send a follow-up that says, this isn't what I asked for at all.
Which is just a devastating blow to the morale of that junior team member. But let's look at the actual mechanics of what just occurred here.
Right, because we just burned thousands of dollars of time and energy, and nobody was being lazy.
No one. The associate sacrificed their personal life, worked through the night. The partner was just trying to keep a multi-million-dollar matter moving forward efficiently.
Exactly. No one involved was incompetent. Both professionals were working exceptionally hard in completely good faith toward the exact same mutual goal.
Yet, the entire endeavor just collapsed.
Because they were effectively shouting at each other in entirely different behavioral languages.
And the matter inevitably pays the ultimate price for that collapse. So this specific pervasive dysfunction that really forms the core mission of our deep dive today.
Yeah, we are taking a magnifying glass to the hidden, insidious costs of miscommunication in these high-pressure environments.
And while our sources focus a specific lens on legal teams, given their unique structural pressures, the architecture of this failure applies absolutely anywhere stakes are high.
Right, anywhere margins are thin and time is the ultimate currency.
Exactly. So we'll be decoding the behavioral styles that drive these massive disconnects using the DISC profiling framework.
And finally, we're going to construct a concrete blueprint to solve this, the communication charter.
Because the overarching objective here is a paradigm shift. We have to stop treating communication as an innate soft skill that people either have or just lack, and start treating it as a hard, measurable, and highly manageable project risk.
It's a risk to be mitigated, plain and simple.
So for you listening, whether you're currently quarterbacking a massive legal transaction or you're just trying to get your cross-functional engineering team aligned on a fast-moving product launch, this deep dive is custom-tailored for your daily reality.
We are going to equip you with specific tools to stop guessing what your colleagues are secretly thinking.
And start building structural systems that eliminate this daily grinding friction. So to fix a systemic problem like this, we have to start at the foundation. Why is this happening, and why is the financial and emotional toll so catastrophic?
Well, When analyzing the hidden costs of miscommunication, I think the primary challenge is their sheer invisibility.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, miscommunication does not manifest as a neat little line item on a quarterly budget report. You will never, ever look at a legal timesheet and see a billing entry for, 3 hours spent decoding a cryptic, passive-aggressive email from the managing partner.
Oh man, if that billing code actually existed, it would force an overnight revolution in corporate behavior.
Wouldn't it? Imagine a client getting an invoice and seeing a $10,000 charge for internal team dysfunction.
They would lose their minds. The financial penalty would be immediate.
Exactly. But because it remains invisible on the official ledger, the cost compounds in much more insidious ways.
Right.
Think about our Tuesday afternoon scenario. Where does the cost actually accumulate? It shows up in the form of deeply demotivated associates who begin to suffer from learned helplessness.
Oh, like they feel like no matter how hard they work, they can never hit the invisible target.
Precisely. And it shows up in frustrated partners who, tired of receiving the wrong output, just decide it's faster to do the work themselves.
Which creates a massive bottleneck of micromanagement.
Exactly. It manifests as chronic delays in deliverables. And ultimately, all of this internal friction bleeds outward, resulting in client relationships that slowly, quietly erode over years.
Until the client finally leaves, and the firm cannot figure out why. It's wild. And our sources make a really compelling case that legal teams are uniquely, maybe even dangerously vulnerable to this specific species of communication breakdown.
Yeah, it's essentially a perfect storm of environmental factors.
Right, because you have this relentless pressure cooker atmosphere where the primary product being sold is time.
Yes, the work operates under extreme constraints. The matters themselves are frequently emotionally charged, especially when dealing with high-stakes litigation or corporate survival.
Or massive financial transactions.
Yeah.
And you're placing all of this within an incredibly strict traditional hierarchical structure where pushing back against leadership is, like, culturally taboo.
Right. And within that specific ecosystem, the sources highlight a profound distinction that I find just fascinating. It's the chasm between being precise and being clear.
Oh, precise versus clear. I love this part.
Yeah. Lawyers, by the very nature of their rigorous academic conditioning and professional training, are taught to be legally precise. Every single syllable in a contract is scrutinized for its exact legal weight, its precedent, its potential loopholes.
Right.
However, being legally precise on paper is entirely divorced from being interpersonally clear in an office.
Okay, let me bring in an analogy to sort of solidify that distinction for anyone listening. Consider a brilliant, world-class software developer, okay?
Okay.
They sit down and write flawless, incredibly complex, elegant code for a revolutionary new application.
Right.
The technical precision of the code base is absolute perfection. It's a mathematical masterpiece.
Right.
But then, instead of building an intuitive user interface, they just hand the end user a raw USB drive with a sticky note that says, "Run it."
Oh, wow, yeah. The technical brilliance is completely negated by the delivery.
Precisely. The precision of the underlying code is irrelevant if the user experience is a disaster. The client has no idea how to execute the file, what parameters to input, or what the program is actually designed to output.
It's useless to them.
Exactly. And that is the exact dynamic at play when a highly trained, brilliant legal mind sends a cryptic, 3-word email. The technical legal knowledge resting behind that email might be flawless, but the interpersonal delivery mechanism is so broken that the receiver cannot process the instruction.
And it creates a tremendous bottleneck. I mean, think about a really common instruction like, revise this clause.
Yeah, very common.
In a legal context, a senior partner assumes they are being highly precise by pointing to a specific section of a document. Interpersonally, however, that instruction is a void.
Because it communicates nothing about the scope of the required revision.
Exactly. Are we softening the language? Are we making it more aggressive? Are we checking it against new precedent?
And it communicates nothing about the urgency of the task or the ultimate strategic expectation of the client.
Right. Or take the word urgent, which was the catalyst in our opening scenario. The ambiguity of that single word is just staggering.
Because to a senior partner who's managing 20 different cases, urgent might simply mean, please make sure this is the first thing you look at when you log in tomorrow morning so we don't forget it.
Exactly. But to the junior associate who is desperate to prove their worth, urgent means drop everything you are currently doing, ignore your family, and get this back to me in 60 minutes.
The receiver is forced into this terrifying position where they have to guess the sender's intent. And statistically speaking, under pressure, they will almost always guess wrong.
The source material identifies this specific phenomenon as the shorthand trap.
The shorthand trap. Tell me more about that.
Well, in complex hierarchical teams, you rarely have a monolithic group of people who share the exact same communication style. What you actually have are senior professionals who have spent decades surviving and thriving in these decisive, high-stakes environments.
Right.
And over time, they develop an extreme shorthand. They communicate in fragments, acronyms, and bullet points because they view time as the ultimate scarce resource.
But the danger, of course, is that this shorthand doesn't translate down the chain of command.
No, not at all.
To the junior colleague who desperately requires comprehensive context to perform at their intellectual peak, that efficient shorthand is easily misread as harshness.
Yes. It reads as impatience, dissatisfaction, or just outright anger.
And because junior lawyers operate at the bottom of a strict hierarchy, they're eager to please, but often terrified to ask clarifying questions. Asking for context feels tantamount to admitting incompetence.
So they suffer in silence.
Yeah, they fill in the blanks of that aggressive shorthand with their own worst-case scenario assumptions.
Which is just so damaging. What's fascinating here is that this systemic dynamic forces us to ask a difficult question regarding accountability.
Like, who is actually at fault when the matter fails?
Exactly. Is it the senior lawyer for being excessively brief and withholding context? Or is it the junior lawyer for lacking the professional courage to ask a basic clarifying question?
And what's the answer?
The structural reality is that neither individual is at fault. This isn't a failure of individual skill, intellect, or attitude. It is a fundamental failure of the system itself.
A system failure. Framing it that way changes the entire approach to the problem.
It really does.
Because if we view miscommunication as an inevitable character flaw of, difficult people, we're paralyzed. We're doomed to wander the halls of our offices misunderstanding each other until retirement.
Exactly. But if we categorize this as a system failure, it implies that the system can be re-engineered.
We can build a better architecture. But if the current system is broken because everyone is effectively speaking a different behavioral language, how do we even begin the translation process?
Right. We need a robust, reliable framework to understand human behavior, specifically how human beings process information and act when the pressure is dialed up to a 10.
And that brings us to the core framework of today's deep dive.
Yes. The framework utilized to decode this behavior, as highlighted in our primary sources, is DISC profiling. Specifically, the Extended DIC framework, which is a core component of the Applied Legal Project Management, or LPM, course by Pocket Advisor. And I want to be very clear about the intent here.
Please do.
The goal of introducing a profiling system like DISC to a highly educated team is not to slap reductive labels on people, stick them in a box, and declare them good or bad communicators.
Right.
It is an analytical tool designed to map behavioral tendencies. It observes how we prefer to ingest information, how we synthesize that information to make decisions, and most critically, how we biologically react when we are placed under immense stress.
Okay, wait. Let me push back on this entirely because I know a large portion of our listeners will share my skepticism here.
I welcome it. Lay it on me.
Whenever I hear about behavioral profiling being deployed in a corporate setting, whether we're talking about DIC, Myers-Briggs, Enneagrams, or whatever else, my immediate reaction is to categorize it as corporate astrology.
Corporate astrology. Yes, I hear that a lot.
Right. Because human beings are incredibly complex, contradictory, and adaptive creatures.
Yeah.
Aren't we creating a massive risk by boxing complex professionals into rigid four-letter categories?
It's a valid fear.
Doesn't this create a self-fulfilling prophecy where if I'm told someone is a dominant profile, I will instinctively treat them like a bulldozer, which in turn causes them to act aggressively, defensively, proving the profile right?
Yeah.
How does the LPM framework prevent this from becoming a weaponized limitation?
That is a phenomenal piece of pushback. And honestly, it's a trap that many rudimentary HR departments fall into.
Oh, for sure.
If a profiling tool is used as an excuse, like if someone says, well, I'm a high D, so I'm just blunt, you have to deal with it, then the tool has been weaponized to justify poor behavior.
Right. It just becomes a get-out-of-jail-free card for being a jerk.
Exactly. It becomes a limiting deterministic box. But the defense of extended DISC, particularly in how it's strategically applied in these specialized legal courses, is that it fundamentally acknowledges human complexity.
Okay, how so?
The methodology asserts that every single person is a blend of all four styles. We all possess the latent capacity for dominance, for influence, for steadiness, and for conscientiousness. We draw on different styles depending on our environment.
So we aren't just fixed in amber.
Far from it. However, neurological patterns dictate that one or two of these styles tend to dominate our default reactions.
Especially under stress, right?
Yes, especially when we are stripped of our cognitive buffers. When we're tired, when the deadline is looming, when the client is angry, we revert to a baseline operating system.
Okay, that makes sense.
The true value of this framework isn't in assigning the label itself. The value is that it makes the invisible mechanisms of stress visible. It provides a shared, objective vocabulary to understand why a colleague is reacting in a way that seems irrational to you.
Oh, wow.
Once you have that vocabulary, you can stop personalizing the behavior. You stop having the internal monologue that says, my boss is a sociopath who hates me. And you start realizing, my boss is under immense pressure, and their default state requires raw, unfiltered data to feel secure.
Which shifts you from a state of emotional defensive reaction into a state of strategic professional adaptation.
Precisely.
Depersonalizing the friction. That is a massive paradigm shift. I mean, if I could look at a screening partner and see a data-starved system instead of a personal attack, my cognitive load drops dramatically.
What? Great.
Okay, let's delve deeply into these 4 profiles, because this is where the theoretical translation becomes intensely practical. We're going to explore each quadrant, and as we go through these, I want you listening to picture where your own default baseline might sit.
And perhaps more importantly, where your most frustrating colleague might fall.
Oh, definitely. Let's begin with the high D.
All right, so the D in high D stands for dominant.
Dominant.
To understand a high D, you have to understand their internal driving monologue, which is essentially, let's decide and move. They are propelled by forward momentum.
Going back to our hook, the person who types, need this today, please prioritize, and just hit send without a second thought. That screams high D.
It is the absolute hallmark of the profile. Within a legal environment, high D professionals are the individuals who thrive in chaos.
Right.
They're the litigators who come alive during a crisis, the negotiators who excel in highly complex, combative, zero-sum scenarios. They are fiercely decisive. They are direct to the point of being blunt. And they are intensely, almost obsessively results-focused. They identify the finish line, and they want to shatter any obstacle to get there via the shortest, most direct route imaginable.
Which is an incredibly valuable trait when the building is genuinely on fire and you need someone to just kick the door down and lead the team out.
Indeed. But the collateral damage occurs when there is no fire.
Right.
When they apply that same door-kicking energy to a routine Tuesday afternoon matter, their communication style feels like a bulldozer to everyone else.
I can imagine.
If you are a junior associate tasked with communicating complex findings to a high D partner, you must radically adapt your approach.
How do you do that?
The actionable strategy here is counterintuitive to how lawyers are trained. You must lead with the conclusion.
Really?
Yes. Do not walk into their office and deliver a 10-minute chronological preamble about the fascinating background of the case, or the nuances of the precedent, or the struggles of your research process. They do not care about the journey.
They only care about the destination. So you basically have to invert the typical academic structure. Start with the answer.
Start with the bottom line. Give them the definitive conclusion immediately. Follow it up with 2 or at most 3 clear, actionable options, and then make your firm recommendation.
Just keep the entire interaction aggressively concise.
Exactly. If they want the supporting data, they will ask for it. This is a vital survival mechanism for junior team members to internalize. If a high D seems incredibly blunt, or if they cut you off mid-sentence, they are rarely being intentionally hostile.
Right.
They're simply being efficient in the only biological way they know how.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. That reframing, they aren't being hostile, they're being efficient. That's the kind of insight that could literally save a junior associate from a nervous breakdown. It just completely neutralizes the perceived threat.
It really does.
Let's pivot to the complete opposite side of the spectrum. What does the high I profile look like in this environment?
So the I stands for influential. If the high D operates on the principle of let's decide and move, the high I operates on the principle of let's get buy-in.
The ultimate people persons, the charismatic connectors.
Exactly. These are the natural relationship builders. In the context of a law firm, these individuals are frequently the massive rainmakers.
Right, they bring in the business.
Yes. They are the partners who can walk into an icy client meeting and instantly energize the room. They possess this innate ability to get incredibly difficult, warring stakeholders aligned on a common vision.
That's a superpower.
It is. They also instinctively know how to make junior team members feel seen, validated, and appreciated. They communicate with an abundance of enthusiasm, using sweeping gestures and vivid metaphors.
I can already sense the friction, though. Because charisma is fantastic for winning a client, but execution usually requires rigid focus. What is the operational catch with a high I?
Well, the operational bottleneck with a high I lies entirely in how their brains process information. A high D processes internally and speaks only to decide. A high I processes ideas verbally.
Meaning what, exactly?
They literally need to talk things through out loud to figure out what their actual opinion is.
Oh, man. I have witnessed this exact dynamic, and it can be maddening if you do not understand the underlying psychology.
Oh, completely.
Like, let's say I'm a highly structured junior associate, right? And I go to a high I partner needing a simple yes or no decision on a strategy. I ask the question, and suddenly the partner starts throwing out 10 different wild ideas.
Yes, brainstorming out loud.
Right, pivoting from one legal strategy to a completely contradictory one in real time, pacing around the room. If I don't realize they are just verbal processing, I am going to walk out of that office thinking, this partner is a disaster. They are totally indecisive and have no idea how to lead this matter.
And that conclusion would be a fundamental, potentially career-damaging misinterpretation of their cognitive process.
Wow. So what's the move there?
The actionable advice when managing up to a high II is that you must strategically allow them the space for that conversational wandering. You have to let them get the ideas out of their head and into the air.
If you just listen.
You actively acknowledge their ideas, you validate their enthusiasm, and then gently, repeatedly redirect the conversation back to the specific core decision required.
Right.
Most importantly, as you highlighted, you must never interpret their verbal processing as a lack of direction or indecision. They are just thinking out loud.
That is so crucial.
Because if you try to cut them off early to force a bottom-line answer, the way you would successfully manage a high D, you will actually shut down a high I's best cognitive functioning. You'll frustrate them, and they'll view you as rigid and unimaginative.
The contrast is stark. The high D wants you to give them the bottom line so they can move. The high I wants you to explore the landscape with them so they can feel aligned.
Exactly.
This brings us to the third profile, which really feels like the structural glue of any organization.
The high S.
Yes. The S stands for steady. Their internal guiding principle is a relentless desire for consistency. Let's be consistent and thorough.
You know, I would argue that every highly functional, profitable team rests heavily on the unglamorous shoulders of the high S profiles.
I would agree entirely. High S professionals bring an incredible grounding reliability and immense patience to a volatile team.
They're the stabilizers. Exactly. They possess a deep, ingrained, almost moral care for the quality of the process itself. They're not chasing the adrenaline of the courtroom. They are the individuals who are unparalleled at long-form, complex drafting, where stamina, meticulous consistency, and historical knowledge of the matter are required.
Right.
They prefer to understand the entire panoramic picture, the whole timeline, the long-term implications before they ever commit to a path. Above all other things, they value predictability.
So if their cognitive superpower is predictability, then unpredictability must be their absolute kryptonite.
Oh, completely. Unpredictability triggers a profound stress response in a high S. Consider a scenario where a high D partner runs into the conference room, energized by a sudden crisis, and yells, "Scrap everything we've done for the last month. We are taking a totally different approach, and I need the new brief in an hour."
Oh boy. The high D is probably riding an adrenaline high, thrilled by the pivot.
Exactly. The high S, meanwhile, is deeply biologically destabilized by it.
Because to the high S, that pivot doesn't look like agility. It looks like reckless chaos. It feels like throwing away a carefully constructed, safe process for no good reason.
Precisely. Therefore, the actionable advice for communicating with a high S, especially if you are a leader who frequently pivots, is that you must provide comprehensive context. You cannot just bark orders.
Right.
You need to give them as much advance notice as humanly possible before instituting a change. Now, in high-stakes environments, you can't always avoid emergencies. But when you are forced to change direction suddenly, you must invest an extra 2 minutes to explain the why behind the change. Explain the strategic rationale.
That makes a lot of sense.
Furthermore, you must actively, explicitly recognize their contribution to the team's stability. A high S needs to know that their thoroughness is valued as a critical asset and not viewed merely as a bureaucratic roadblock to speed.
Which perfectly sets the stage for our final profile, the high C.
The C stands for conscientious. Their mantra, their core operating system, is simple. Let's get it right.
Ah, the ultimate detail masters.
The uncompromising detail masters. These are the professionals who will read a dense 300-page merger agreement at 2 a.m. and find the one missing comma in a limitation of liability clause that everyone else, including opposing counsel, completely glossed over.
No.
They inherently distrust assumptions, they require proof before signing off on anything, and they maintain exceptionally, sometimes punishingly, high standards for themselves and everyone around them.
I imagine the friction between a high C and a high D is the source of about 90% of all law firm drama.
You're not wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
You have a high D who wants to smash through the wall to get to the finish line. A high C who wants to stop and conduct a structural integrity test on the wall first.
The friction is legendary and highly predictable. To a high D partner, a high C associate appears maddeningly slow, overly cautious, and hopelessly bogged down in irrelevant academic minutiae. But the structural reality of the legal profession is that the high C's caution is almost always justified. The high C is the person actually protecting the firm from catastrophic malpractice. The high D brings in the money, but the high C ensures the firm gets to keep it.
That's a great way to frame it. So how do you manage that communication bridge? How do you get a high C to move at the speed of business without compromising their need for accuracy?
The crucial strategy for communicating with a high C is to provide raw, unvarnished data.
Data.
Yes. They are immune to the enthusiastic emotional persuasion that works on a high I. They will reject the superficial, bottom-line conclusions demanded by a high D. They want to see the underlying math.
So no vague instructions.
You must avoid vague instructions at all costs. Ambiguity is their enemy. Most importantly, you must give them sufficient time to analyze the data before demanding a decision.
Right.
If a high D forces a high C to make a snap judgment without allowing them to review the source documents, the high C will experience immense anxiety and will likely dig their heels in, creating massive resistance and grinding the project to a halt.
You know, when you lay the matrix out like this dominant, influential, steady, conscientious, you just experience this profound moment of clarity. You suddenly realize that the agonizing friction in your office is very rarely born of malice.
Exactly. It's not malice.
Your boss isn't angry with you. They're a high D operating under the stress of efficiency. Your colleague isn't ignoring your need for a final decision. They're a high guy lost in the woods of their own verbal processing.
Right.
That junior associate isn't trying to slow the project down to annoy you. They're a high C desperately trying to make sure the firm doesn't get sued. It all strips away the moral judgment we assign to communication styles.
It really does. It is not about assigning labels of right or wrong. It's about recognizing the operating system of the human being across the table and actively formatting your message so their brain can actually download it.
That is the perfect synthesis. You're adapting the transmission to match the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But understanding the psychological profile is only the first half of the equation, right?
Right. Because let's assume you've done the hard work. You've correctly identified that your lead associate is a high C. You know they require extensive data, meticulous detail, and quiet time to process.
Okay.
However, if you gather all that wonderful rich data and you blast it to them via a frantic, fragmented WhatsApp text message at 9:30 p.m. on a Friday,
Oh, no.
the communication will still catastrophically fail. Understanding the person is step one. Choosing the right delivery mechanism, the strategic channel, is step two.
The medium is the message, as Marshall McLuhan said.
Yeah.
And this is where the theory has to meet the road. Even with total emotional intelligence and a perfect understanding of DISC profiles, if you choose the wrong channel, you corrupt the data.
Right.
If you attempt to send a highly sensitive, nuanced client instruction via a casual email, you're practically begging for a misinterpretation. If you try to hash out a complex, multi-layered disagreement about legal strategy in a rapid-fire text thread, you're going to escalate the conflict and stall progress entirely.
Right. Legal project communication or any high-stakes corporate communication requires deliberate strategic channel selection.
So let's talk about that. The sources provide a highly detailed tactical breakdown of how to map the channel to the specific intent of the message. We have to start with the most ubiquitous and consequently most abused channel in the corporate world: email.
Email.
Email is the workhorse of the modern economy, but it is deeply misunderstood. According to the framework, when is email actually the correct strategic choice?
Email is the definitive channel for documentation and formal updates. It exists to create a permanent, searchable paper trail.
A paper trail. Okay.
It is perfect for sending weekly status updates, recording formal decisions that have already been made, distributing agendas, or escalating formal risk notices. Where email spectacularly fails is when it is used to resolve ambiguity or to conduct a nuanced, emotionally charged conversation.
I have a personal unbreakable rule of thumb regarding email.
Oh, let's hear it.
If you are sitting at your keyboard and you realize you have been typing for 10 minutes, constructing a massive multi-paragraph email just to explain what you actually meant in your previous email, you must stop typing immediately, take your hands off the keyboard, and pick up the phone.
That is a phenomenal diagnostic rule. If you are typing to clarify your own previous clarification, the channel itself has failed you.
Exactly.
You're attempting to use an asynchronous, flat documentation tool to perform a dynamic conflict resolution task. It's like trying to use a hammer to turn a screw. It simply will not work, and it will only cause more damage.
So when the text-based channel fails, we have to elevate the medium. Let's examine video calls. Since the global shift to remote and hybrid work structures, video has obviously become a dominant staple. But it causes immense fatigue. When is video strategically necessary?
Video is the closest proxy we currently possess for in-person communication for distributed global teams. It is the designated mandatory channel for collaborative discussions and highly complex matters.
Like what?
If you are onboarding a new team member to a massive, complicated case with years of history, you must use video. If you are structuring a complex financial transaction requiring multiple screens and shared documents, or if there's a fundamental simmering disagreement about strategy, use video.
Right.
It is also absolutely crucial for client review meetings, where reading nonverbal cues, seeing a client hesitate before answering, or noticing a subtle look of confusion matters immensely to the outcome.
And there is a real measurable return on investment for utilizing video correctly, isn't there? Our sources highlight a very specific, almost shocking metric regarding the efficiency of video calls.
It is a metric that should compel every project manager to completely rethink their weekly workflow. The data shows that the investment of a focused 30-minute video call will regularly save up to 4 hours of asynchronous email back and forth.
That is an astonishing ratio. 4 hours of typing eliminated by 30 minutes of talking. Why is the disparity so massive?
Because in 30 minutes of real-time, face-to-face dialogue, you can instantly detect and clear up 20 different micro-misunderstandings that would have otherwise each spawned their own separate, confusing email thread.
That makes total sense.
You consolidate the feedback loop. You can see someone frown, stop, and say, wait, you look confused by that clause. Let's address it right now. You cannot do that in an email.
I see the logic, though. Let's inject some reality here. What if you don't have 30 minutes to schedule a formal video call? What if you are in the final hours of a merger, things are moving at breakneck speed, everyone has screen fatigue, and you need a definitive answer from a partner right now?
In that scenario, you revert to the phone. The traditional phone call is the optimal channel for fast decisions and rapid problem solving.
Right.
If a matter is moving quickly and you need a binding decision in the next 15 minutes, you do not email and you do not wait for a Zoom link, you call. It is ideal for quick clarifications, urgent risk escalations, and keeping momentum going on something highly time-sensitive.
I can hear people asking, why phone over a text message or a Slack ping in that scenario?
Yeah.
People love to just shoot off a quick text for something they deem urgent.
Because a phone call is vastly superior in its bandwidth. It's faster than drafting a comprehensive text, but more importantly, it allows for significantly more nuance.
Right, tone of voice.
Exactly. You can hear the tone of their voice.
Yeah.
You can instantly assess if they sound stressed, confident, or distracted. Crucially, a phone call doesn't require both parties to be staring at a screen simultaneously to maintain a continuous flow of information.
Yeah, that ping-pong effect.
Right. You can hash out a complex decision in 2 minutes of dynamic, overlapping conversation on the phone that might take 20 minutes of delayed, ambiguous text ping-pong, where you are just watching the typing bubbles appear and disappear.
That makes perfect sense. Bandwidth over convenience. But there is one channel left in the hierarchy, and it is the most resource-intensive of all: in-person communication. When do we absolutely have to demand that everyone be in the exact same physical room?
In-person communication is reserved exclusively for the most high-stakes, highly sensitive, and profoundly complex discussions an organization can have. We are talking about critical human moments, announcing redundancies, conducting difficult performance reviews, attempting to repair a severely damaged client relationship, or debating major partner-level shifts in firm strategy.
The truly heavy existential stuff.
Exactly. And the neuroscience behind why is critical for leaders to understand. Human communication is overwhelmingly nonverbal. The actual words we use convey only a fraction of the meaning. Tone of voice, subtle shifts in posture, the pacing and rhythm of the conversation, the micro expressions that flash across someone's face for a millisecond. These biological cues simply cannot be fully replicated on a compressed video feed, and they are completely, entirely absent in a text or an email.
Wow. Yeah.
When the stakes are existential, when the cost of a misunderstanding could mean losing a major client or destroying a career, you must proactively choose the channel that leaves the absolute least room for error. You need maximum data fidelity, and that is face-to-face.
We have covered immense ground here. I mean, we've analyzed the hidden financial and emotional costs of ambiguity. We've decoded the psychological matrix of DISC personalities, understanding how different human beings process stress. We've mapped out the strategic hierarchy of communication channels based on the intent of the message.
It's a lot of theory.
It is. That is all fantastic, robust theory. It makes perfect logical sense in a calm, analytical environment like this deep dive. But I want to introduce a harsh reality check. How do we actually enforce any of this? How do you take this brilliant psychological theory and successfully apply it to a stressed out, overworked, sleep-deprived legal team at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning when the firm's server just crashed and your biggest client is demanding immediate answers?
Wow.
Because human nature dictates that theory goes completely out the window during a crisis unless you have a structural mechanism to hold it in place. We need some sort of formal binding contract to keep people from reverting to their worst default habits.
Your reality check is entirely valid, and it is exactly what the source material addresses as the ultimate practical solution. To enforce this theory in the real world, you do not just tell people to communicate better, you build a system.
So what does this all mean in practice?
Specifically, you build what is called a communication charter.
A communication charter. It sounds very official, almost constitutional. What exactly is it?
It operates very much like a constitution for a specific project. It's a simple, explicit, written agreement made between all team members at the very start of a matter or a project. It defines, without ambiguity, exactly how the team will communicate throughout the entire engagement.
How long is this thing?
It doesn't have to be a 50-page compliance manual. In fact, if it is too long, no one will read it. At its core, a highly effective communication charter strips away the chaos by answering 5 specific foundational questions before the work ever begins.
Okay, let's do a deep tactical analysis of these 5 questions, because this is the exact blueprint our listeners can take into their offices tomorrow morning to stop the bleeding. What is the first question we need to answer?
Question number 1 focuses entirely on client communication boundaries. Who speaks to the client directly, on what specific topics, and in what format?
You know, on the surface, this seems like it should be obvious, but knowing how law firms operate, I can imagine this gets messy incredibly fast if it isn't locked down.
It becomes a minefield. You have to clearly, explicitly define who the primary client contact is. But you also need to specify the client's preferences.
Right.
Does this specific client want a dense status update via email every day? Do they prefer a quick, informal 10-minute phone call on Friday afternoons?
Okay.
Or do they want everything routed through a shared, secure digital portal?
Oh, that makes sense.
Furthermore, and this is critical for risk management, this question must clarify who on the internal team actually has the authority to make firm commitments on behalf of the firm.
Why is that so important?
Let's look at a hypothetical disaster. A junior associate is on a factual fact-finding call with a client. The client pressures the junior associate, asking, "Can you guarantee this merger filing will be done by Friday?" The junior associate, wanting to please the client, says, "Yes, absolutely." But the charter never specified that only the matter partner is authorized to make scheduling commitments. Now, the entire team's weekend is ruined, the partner is furious, and the firm is legally exposed, all because a boundary wasn't drawn on day 1.
You are effectively managing the client's expectations by forcefully managing your own internal team's boundaries. That is brilliant. What is the second question the charter must answer?
Question 2 governs internal communication architecture. How will the team communicate internally about the day-to-day progress of the matter?
Really?
Are we using a specific centralized matter management platform? Are we relying on endless email threads? Are we collaborating in shared cloud documents? You have to agree on the technological ecosystem up front so information isn't siloed in individual inboxes.
And this naturally ties right back to our very first scenario, the terrifying ambiguity of the word urgent.
Precisely. The charter is where you define your internal vocabulary. In this document, you explicitly define what urgent means for this specific team on this specific project. You literally write it down. On this matter, urgent means I need you to drop everything and reply within 1 hour. High priority means I need it by the close of the business day. By defining that single word up front, you completely eliminate the panic-induced scrambling and the wasted, unbillable hours we discussed at the very beginning of this deep dive.
That is incredibly practical. It just completely removes the guesswork from the associate's plate. What is question 3?
Question 3 establishes escalation paths. What is the exact protocol for handling risks and blockers? When a deadline is suddenly at risk of being missed, or a major question about the scope of the work arises that fundamentally changes the budget, who needs to know? How quickly do they need to be informed, and via what specific channel?
I can easily see how skipping this question could be fatal to a project. If there is no map, people just get lost.
I will issue a very stern warning on this specific point based on the LPM framework. Leaving the escalation path undefined absolutely guarantees that catastrophic problems will be escalated far too late, and usually to the entirely wrong person.
Why is that?
If the junior team does not have a clearly defined, psychologically safe path detailing how to raise a red flag, their default reaction will be to try to fix it themselves. They will hide the problem until it is completely unfixable, at which point it explodes and the partner is completely blindsided.
It's the difference between noticing a small fire in a wastebasket and knowing exactly where the fire extinguisher is versus ignoring the wastebasket until the whole building is burning down because you were afraid to pull the alarm. You have to authorize people to pull the alarm. Got it. Moving to question 4.
Question 4 dictates the check-in cadence. How often will the team hold mandatory check-ins? What is the agenda, and who is strictly required to attend?
I think required to attend is the key phrase to emphasize there. We have all suffered through the purgatory of being in meetings where half the critical decision makers are missing, rendering the meeting useless and forcing you to repeat the exact same meeting again the next day.
Which is a massive, demoralizing drain on the firm's resources. You need to establish a minimum rhythm of communication before the substantive work even begins. Like what?
Are we doing a rapid 15-minute stand-up every Tuesday and Thursday morning just to clear blockers? Is it a longer, hour-long weekly review on Friday afternoons? Establishing this rigorous consistency stops what project managers call the "I thought you knew" drift.
The "I thought you knew" drift. That perfectly encapsulates the feeling. What exactly is the psychology behind that?
It is the dangerous phenomenon where everyone on a disjointed team just assumes that someone else holds the critical piece of information. The associate assumes the partner told the client about the delay. The partner assumes the associate filed the paperwork. But because there is no regular structured forum to actually share and verify that information, it falls right through the cracks.
So the check-in cadence builds a safety net to catch the drift.
Exactly.
Okay, bring us home. We have boundaries, vocabulary, escalation, and cadence.
Yeah.
What is the fifth and final question of the communication charter?
Question 5 is frequently the most powerful and transformative of all. It asks, what does the team agree not to do? Oh, creating an explicit exclusion list. I find that fascinating. We spend so much time telling people what to do, we forget to tell them what not to do.
It is an incredibly effective psychological tool. You sit down as a team and you agree up front not to make complex decisions about the financial scope of the project via email. You explicitly agree not to use informal platforms like WhatsApp for delivering formal client instructions.
Oh, I love that.
You agree not to communicate concerns about a colleague's performance to a peer without also flagging them to the matter partner. By creating these explicit, agreed-upon exclusions, you preemptively shut down the specific behavioral avenues that typically create the most costly, toxic miscommunications.
It's setting up rigid guardrails on a dangerous mountain road. And when you look at all of this and comprehensively, the deep psychological analysis of DISC profiles, the deliberate mapping of communication channels, and this robust 5-question charter, it really hammers home the broader systemic context presented in our sources. Communication is emphatically not a soft skill.
It is absolutely not a soft skill, and treating it as such is a managerial failure. In the Applied LPM course, which, for context, is facilitated by award-winning attorney Nicolene Shulman-Liu, they utilize the globally recognized ILLPM methodology.
Let me stop you there for a second to ensure clarity. What exactly does the acronym ILPM stand for, and why should our listeners view it as the gold standard in this space?
Excellent clarification. ILPM stands for the International Institute of Legal Project Management. It is essentially the global certifying body that has adapted traditional project management principles, things you would see in engineering or software development, and specifically tailored them to the unique, highly regulated, and pressure-intensive environment of the legal profession.
Right.
Under this methodology, communication is completely stripped of its soft, HR-driven reputation. It is treated as a hard, rigorously measurable project management competency.
Right. It isn't just about holding hands and being nice to each other in the break room. It is about cold, hard risk mitigation.
Precisely. Throughout the 15-module Applied LPM program and the foundational 4-step IILPM framework, they embed this strategy deeply into the operational workflow. Students are required to actually work through these extended DISC profiles within the context of real-world legal scenarios.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. They apply these tools to simulate matter friction. They are taught to treat human miscommunication exactly as it should be treated, as severe project risk that can be identified, quantified, planned for, and mitigated with the exact same rigor you would apply to mitigating financial risk or regulatory risk.
And for any of our listeners who are currently suffering through this daily friction, who desperately want to improve how they manage volatile client relationships, or who simply want their teams to collaborate effectively under pressure instead of fracturing, our sources explicitly mention that you can access a free LPM 101 introduction.
Highly recommend it.
Furthermore, there is a discount available for that comprehensive online course at pocketadvisor.co.zlegal-projectmanagement-course.
It's a framework that provides the rigid structure that good intentions alone simply cannot deliver. You can assemble a team of the most highly intelligent, well-meaning, Ivy League educated professionals in the world, but without a structured communication system binding them together, they will inevitably fail to collaborate effectively when the pressure hits.
Let's take a collective breath and recap the vast terrain we have covered today. We started by looking at a tiny, seemingly innocuous 3-word email, and we uncovered the massive hidden financial and emotional costs, the paralyzing frustration, the delayed deliverables, the eroded client trust that vague communication creates in a high-stakes environment.
Yeah, the true cost of ambiguity.
We then decoded the underlying matrix of human behavior using DISC profiling, learning how to strategically adapt our message for high Ds who demand the bottom line, high Is who need the space to talk it out, high S's who crave predictable consistency, and high C's who require raw data.
The whole spectrum.
From there, we explored the neuroscience of mediums, mapping out how to choose the right channel for the message, realizing that an email is excellent for a paper trail, but catastrophic for conflict resolution.
Absolutely catastrophic.
And finally, we locked all of that psychological theory into a practical, highly enforceable blueprint with the 5-question communication charter, transforming communication from a soft skill into a hard project management metric.
It is a comprehensive end-to-end system for operational sanity. But as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, perhaps slightly uncomfortable thought to reflect upon.
I'm ready.
We have spent this entire hour analyzing how to decode other people. We have discussed how to figure out your difficult colleagues' profiles, how to build robust systems around their flaws, and how to manage their unpredictable reactions. But I want you to take that magnifying glass, turn the mirror around, and point it directly at yourself.
Okay, turning the mirror around, that is usually where the real growth and the real discomfort begins.
If communication is truly a measurable project risk, as we have definitively established it is, how much is your own unexamined default communication style secretly costing your organization right now?
Oh, wow.
What are the specific hidden costs, the wasted hours, the quiet frustrations, the missed opportunities that you are personally generating on a daily basis simply because you have stubbornly refused to adapt your preferred style to the human beings around you?
Wow. That is a deeply provocative challenge. Because it is so incredibly easy to point at the partner sending the "need this today, please prioritize" email and self-righteously declare they are the problem with this culture.
Right.
It is significantly harder and requires much more of professional maturity to ask, Am I currently sending my own version of that toxic email without even realizing the wake of anxiety I am leaving behind?
The system only improves when every single participant takes radical responsibility for their own output.
Well, on that challenging and necessary note, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We sincerely hope you take these profound psychological insights, these practical frameworks, and especially that final, uncomfortable question into your very next team meeting. Stop guessing what the email means, start building your charter, and finally take control of the hidden costs. Until next time.